Okay.
cool. Well, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, me too. So let's begin our journey before we get into your life of being an author and a podcaster and a creator. I want to get into 6 years ago, this pandemic changed so much about the way we live our lives. How did you
Mm.
get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you live and work today?
That's a really good question. It's a funny thing. I tend to be a bit of a hermit by nature.
Yeah.
And so for me to actually not have to go out and not have to use up my social battery was actually quite good. But I think that what happened with a lot of us, apart from the tragedy of so many lives being lost and the children, I had a grandson that was born at that time and, had developmental delays really due to that. I just feel that it was difficult to come out of it. So it changed everything for me insofar as I was working as a photographer before that, which is obviously face to face. After the first lockdown, I got the momentum going again. Then there was another, and then there was another. And by the end of that, I kind of didn't want to be starting all over again. So I took that opportunity to wind down and I kind of retired from photography a couple of years ago. So I wrote more. I put programs online and so on. But actually, I found it a really interesting time insofar as things that I'm a workaholic, and like a lot of people, I work so that I don't think too much about things. And I found that things that I hadn't dealt with in my life came back to haunt me because I didn't have all the distraction of going out, of, working outside of the house and so on. Suddenly, I had to face up to things that I'd never sort of really faced up to without realizing that those things were still lingering. So that was an interesting thing for me, and I think a fair few people have found that. How
Yeah.
about yourself? Did
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I think so. I think during that time, my son's on the spectrum. He was born with developmental delays, so he loves school and loves baseball. So when in March,
Mm,
when it all came to a close, I was just like, I don't, what am I going to do? And I
yeah.
did more interviews than ever. I didn't do this feed. I have a jazz radio show, so I interviewed a lot more musicians, and that was wonderful. It was therapeutic, and I have a
Yeah.
stepdaughter, so I would interview them while they were in the car with me or wherever we were at. And
Mm.
overall, the musicians were very positive, very strong, virtuous kind of people. So it was really good. But um, I'm a busybody, just like with what you're talking about. So I just got out into the world and just kept going, and just did not. I mean, it had a monopoly on us. I did not want to have this air bubble in my existence where it's like, well, we can't do anything because we're told we can't do anything. It's like, we can get out and see the world. We can still operate and function even though there's this virus, and just, just try to live the best you can, I guess, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So,
And it definitely made me sort of start podcasting more. I was, because that
yes.
was my social life. And in fact, it's kind of remained a big part of my social life.
Yeah.
So I do have to sort of actually push myself a little bit to go and meet people in real life because I have such a rich online life.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to to go out. So I do have to watch that as I get older as well. I could become more isolated.
But doesn't the world of getting, because podcasting is such a wonderful civil world of discourse and just so many great things. Have you found that that enhances the way that you communicate and interact when you actually get into face-to-face contact?
I don't think it's changed the way I interact. I mean, I'm a very sort of curious person. I love talking to people. I love people's stories. It's my social battery that's lacking. I can do that for a little while, and then I have to come home and put a cold flannel on my head and close my eyes.
Yeah.
It's, it's just the sheer volume. I mean, I was saying earlier that I've had a friend over from the US, and we devised ourselves a literary tour. She wanted to go and see Thomas Hardy, where Thomas Hardy was, and Agatha Christie, and Jane Austen. So we've been around the country and I've been with her 24/7. Now I normally spend an awful lot of time on my own. So that I found sort of a real kind of like shock in a way to the system because I needed to be on all the time. Um, and I think the wonderful thing about podcasting is that it's very intense for that hour, but then you wind down again, so you're only on for so long.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? I feel as if I went off on a tangent there.
Yeah, no, you did, and and it's a part of your world, and it's what we're doing right now, and I'm still just absolutely blown away that podcasting became such a big thing. I've been doing
Mm,
my show for 15 years, and I did interviews for a long, long time, and then all of a sudden, it's in pop culture, it's in movies, it's in TV, it's all over the
yeah,
place, and it
yeah,
still
yeah,
continues to gain in popularity. So it's really fun that it's become
yeah,
such a viable, wonderful place to communicate ideas and have connections. So
yeah.
it's
You get to
wonderful.
know somebody to a certain degree very quickly
Yes.
when you're talking to them on a podcast because we're talking about such serious things very often, or things that are very relevant. You kind of get to the nub of who a person is very, very
Uh-huh.
quickly,
Yeah.
and I find that really satisfying. We don't have to sort of have a load of small talk and
Uh-huh.
make my eyes glaze over.
Yep, you get right to it. So let's get a
Exactly.
handle on exactly what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of 13-year-olds. You're at career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize your day job to make sense to them?
Wow. Wow, that is really, I've never been asked that before. Well, every day is different. Um, when you work for yourself, as you will know, and you do creative things, you have to be very, very self-starting and self-motivated. So I will normally wake up in the morning and it looks as though I get up late, but actually I'm lying there planning my day with my eyes closed and snoring slightly.
Yeah.
But that's how I start my day. I always sort of lie in bed and I kind of just go through what I'm going to do and how it all fits together. And I always have to say to myself, how is this going to move the dial on my business? Because otherwise I might just go off and like, airy fairy and do whatever I feel like doing.
Yeah.
And then I'll come downstairs and obviously I'll do a little bit of exercise or whatever because you've got to get the oxygen flowing around your body. It's very easy if you work for yourself and you work from home to just sit on your backside and not move all day long. And then I'll just get stuck into whatever I'm going to do. If I've got a podcast guest, I will check out their website. I'll make sure I know who they are because when as you know, interviewing a lot of people, you can kind of get yourself into a bit of a muddle if you're not careful. So I make sure that I review all of that and I know who they are. But I never listen to other interviews that they've done. And I don't go too deeply into things because I want everything to be fresh. And then maybe I'll have an interview. If I do that, I like to edit it straight away so that it's all fresh in my mind as well. And I get all the links together and all that kind of thing. Because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes.
Yep.
And I find if they start to bank up, it gets a bit overwhelming. If I'm writing, which is most days, I will sit down and sometimes I'll put a timer on because I tend to get my brain distracts me. I start thinking about something else or whatever. But I think that when you do something creative, you have to be very organized insofar as chunks of time. It used to be when I was younger. And probably if I was talking to a group of 13-year-olds, I would say to them, you would probably do it like this. If I was writing a novel, because I used to be published as a novel writer 30 years ago, I would work through the night and I would write a novel in a fortnight. And then I'd crash because I hadn't slept properly or eaten properly or whatever. I can't do that anymore because as you get older, your energy changes.
Yeah.
And I've learnt to work with my energy so that I have a clear cut off. Midnight is my cut off, and I must be in bed by midnight. That said, I break it all the time.
Yeah.
That might be in a research phase, so then I'm kind of reading a lot. I try to make sure that once a week I will go out of the house and meet somebody else. And I try to make sure that I will go out for a walk or just walk down to my local shops so that I say good morning to people and see people. Because although I live with my husband and my eldest son is here half the week because he works in the family business. I've been married for 45 years. You don't really have a lot to say to each other. So I do need to go out and meet other people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean that if they want to know what I do, basically that's it.
Yeah.
And then but some days will be like today. I've been looking after my granddaughter while my daughter works, and that is part of for me of the freedom of being self-employed is that I am there for my family when they need me and when I want to sort of engage in that way as well. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. So what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were young, what was your dream job?
Journalist.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't have the confidence. I didn't
Yeah.
have the yeah, I just didn't have any self-confidence. I went to do a degree in communication studies, thinking that that would lead me into journalism. But I dropped out after a year. I was, as I say, lacking in confidence. I met my husband. He was still at university, doing his structural engineering degree, and I dropped out and I supported him while he finished that. Got married when I was 20, months after my 20th birthday, first baby at 22, had three more. Spent my whole of my 20s and 30s bringing up children.
Yeah.
So, those kind of, I always wrote, and I used to write, when they were little. I used to have articles published in various places, and The Lady magazine was one that I used to write for. I used to write a little opinion piece for that. And I always kind of had my hand in with those things. And then I did have a career for a good sort of 5 or 6 years where I was producing novels, and that was traditional publishing. And that went really well. And then I gave it all up to help my husband with his business and taught myself accounts and payroll, which was a big mistake because I got very depressed and that kind of, being in a back room looking at figures, that wasn't for me at all. Um, and then I hit perimenopause, which, as your listeners will probably know, it can be a time of great upheaval. I mean,
Yeah.
midlife is a time of upheaval for men as well as women. But at that time, we weren't talking about these things. So I just thought I was going mad. I
Yeah.
didn't realize what was happening at all. And I actually, we went through the 2008 financial crisis with the business. And it was a very, very difficult time. And at the end of that, I said to my husband, look, shall we stay married or shall we stay working together? Because this isn't going to work for much longer. So I decided to leave the business and went into a job that I wasn't particularly keen on. But then I went on a photography course and I loved it so much that I became a professional photographer and did that for 15 years. And yeah, it was wonderful. That was kind of the career that I had, just 15 years long.
So it seems like you had the opportunity, going back to those early dreams of journalism, to reclaim that dream through
Mm.
photos and through podcasting. Do you feel like that you've kind of, after all of the sacrifice of raising children and being at home and doing everything, that you've reclaimed this dream that never went away, but just had to hang out in a backpack for a while?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it, actually, to be honest, Joe. And I don't resent the fact that I put everybody else first. I facilitated my children growing up and launching into the world, my husband and his business and so on. And I don't resent it, but I do wish I'd been more aware of it.
Yeah,
I just did what was expected of me
sure.
in society as much as anything else, and the way I was brought up. Um, and I always remember my dad saying to me, because I was the first person in my family to go to university, and I always remember him saying, "Look, you're a really bright girl, Joe, but you need to hide that because men don't like intelligent women." And that's really not something to tell a 14-year-old girl, when you
Yeah.
start to be interested in boys. So I kind of, I think I must have internalized that because I always kind of hid my my intelligence, if you like, just so that I could be popular. Don't think I ever succeeded at that either, but it was a funny time. I look at my girls who are now in their late 30s and 40, um, and they're so full of confidence. And I look at my granddaughters, wow, it's just something else.
Yeah.
And so I think we've come a long way in that regard. And my sons, I mean, they don't have those attitudes at all.
Sure.
It's good
Sure.
to see.
Yeah. So who's been your hero? Who's been that inspirational force that's allowed you to go after this dream, that's allowed you to professionally diversify and to become who you are today and knowing your true voice and calling?
Well. It's my youngest son,
Wow.
believe it or not. Because my son Dan, he's a musician and composer and a filmmaker, and he has an unusual brain, shall we say, and he sees no limits. He said to me once, just to give you an example, he was living at home because he was backwards and forwards. He's traveled the world collecting music from different musicians, putting it all together, producing it, and so on. And then every now and again, when he needed to fill his coffers, he'd come home, so he was fed. And he came downstairs one day. He said, "Oh, Mum," he said, I'm going to Kabul." Uh, and I said, "What are you talking about? Kabul's in Afghanistan." "Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I know." And I said, "But there's a war going on, I mean, this was 2017." And he said, "Yeah, yeah." I said, "Well, why? Why are you going to Kabul? Explain this to me." And he said, "I'm going to make a documentary." And I just looked at him and I said, "But you've never held a camera." And he went, "Details, Mum, details."
Oh,
And
wow.
uh, I said, "But you don't have a camera." And he looked at me, "Well, because I have cameras." And he went to Afghanistan on his own to film a documentary about the first female orchestra in Afghanistan.
Wow.
And he wrote it, he narrated it, he did the sound engineering, he did the filming, all by himself,
Wow.
using stills cameras, which last 20 minutes before you have to, you know, and they were overheating and all of this. And he made this remarkable documentary, which is called Sisters and is on Amazon Prime, so can be seen. And then that kind of changed his life because obviously, the girls were fleeing then when the Taliban came back and he got involved in all of that and co-founded the Afghanistan Free Harmonic Orchestra, which is based in the US with the diaspora of Afghan musicians. But he was always, when I saw what he was doing with Four Bar Collective, that started the midlife movement. When I saw, if ever I'm doubting myself, I will always phone Dan because he sees no limits to
Yeah.
anything. And he's chosen a life which it's a hard life because he makes his living, he's actually working mostly as a YouTube reactor, this whole thing, which didn't exist, did it, 5 years ago? But that's where he makes his main income.
Yeah.
And then he's doing all these films and I just realized that it was okay to have the kind of brain that I have, that I
Yeah.
passed down to him, that I'm a multi-potentialate, if you like,
Yeah.
that I don't have to do just one thing and
Yep.
that's okay, and I don't have to walk a traditional route.
Yep.
Um, and seeing him doing that, even despite all the problems that it can cause, kind of gave me permission to myself. Well, now I've got the chance to do that. I'm very fortunate that I've got somebody else paying the mortgage. I don't have to struggle as much as he does. But yeah, that's what he really inspired me.
That's wonderful.
All my children do, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
They just, anyway.
I love it. So let me ask you this. If you could interview one person alive on the planet right now, anybody on your podcast, who would you love
Oh,
to sit down and have a
wow.
conversation with?
Wow, there are several. Can I have a list?
Yeah, you can have a round table.
I'd like to have Chip Conley, founder of the MEA,
Yeah.
the I can't even, I can't remember what it stands for. I'd like to interview Barbara Levy, Dr. Barbara Levy, who's done all this research into how self-ageism damages us. Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who's done all the research into women's brains, which has been absolutely fascinating. And there was someone else that I was thinking the other day, do I dare approach them? Because she who dares sometimes wins.
Yeah,
And I can't remember their name. This is the only thing that really annoys me about getting older is thoughts just walk out your ear
I
and wander.
know. They do. They meander. The Rolodex gets full. So, when
Yeah.
you look in the proverbial rearview mirror of your life, I'm going to ask you this question.
Mm.
If you had a dream tonight ran into the 18-year-old version of you, or the version of you that was still in college in communication studies, and you walked into a room at your age now, and there was a film projector, and you click play, and your life, a 60-second highlight reel comes up of all the decisions and everything that you've made, all the things that you've done. Would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
I think that young version of myself thought it was inevitable that I would take the path I took because that's what I was raised to do. I was raised to be a wife and a mother, and that was it. Um, I think she would be very pleased. I think she'd be horrified that it's taken me 60 years, but I think she would be very pleased to know that I am now doing what fills me up and what she always wanted to do. I'm telling people stories and I'm facilitating. People need to be seen and heard,
Mhm.
and we don't, especially as we get older, we're not seen and heard enough.
Yeah,
And just that act of seeing and hearing somebody, she would be proud of that, I think.
yeah,
But I would want to tell her to put herself first more,
yeah,
and to just believe in herself because she really didn't. And I do, the poor girl, I'd like to put my arms around her and say, you're going to be okay.
yeah. That's the caveat to this question. There's always that piece of advice that you can impart. So, in that 60-second highlight reel, what's the highlight? What are you the happiest and proudest of?
I am proud of my family.
Yeah.
And I put my life into that. So yes, I'm proud of my children and my grandchildren. But I would say that just personally, the thing that I am most proud of is that I now have the faith in myself to follow what I want to do and to write and to to start a YouTube channel at 63, which I was when I started it, was, who was going to listen to this 63-year-old woman whittering on about, about growing older and how actually there are so many positives about it. But 10,000 people have,
Yeah.
well, I think I've gone down a bit now. But all those subscribers, all those views. I had one video that 242,000 people watched. Bonkers. So I'm proud of myself for feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Joe, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, all of your fans, everyone that knows you in different capacities, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think, oh gosh, I'm saying this in public. I think I have become much more wise. I think that I have a lot of life experience and a lot to give to the world. I'm kind, and kindness is needed in this world now
Hmm.
more than ever.
Yeah.
Um, and I see the best in people. And yeah, that's who I am. That wasn't very succinct, but that's
No,
who I am.
I love it. There's no word limit. You're great. That was a wonderful answer. So if anybody wants to reach out, they want to
Yeah.
get your books, they want to get on your YouTube channel, podcast, any of the wonderful work that you're doing, where do they go? How do they do that?
If they go to my website, which is joblackwell.co.uk, and that's Joe, of course, without an E, with me being female,
Yeah.
joblackwell.co.uk. Everything is on there. So if you look at the Midlife and Beyond menu, there's a drop down podcast, YouTube, and then there are the books and the latest book, the Aging Wonderfully Well book, which is the good news about midlife and growing older.
I love it. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. Thank you for your story. And then what resounds so much after hearing your story is the courage of never giving up, never letting that dream go away. And I think I think it can be hyperbole and it can be simplified, but it's huge and it means a lot whenever you do that. So thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Can I just say one thing? If
Yeah.
anybody's listening to this and they've let go of their dreams the way that I did, you said, was it just in a backpack and waiting to be picked up? And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
it.
you allow yourself to dream because when you're in the thick of things, when you're in the weeds and you've got to pay the rent and you've got to work to live and to support other people, there isn't time to dream, but
Yeah.
those dreams don't go away. They are there waiting for you,
Yeah.
and that's part of the growing older thing that is so wonderful.
Because you can always unzip that backpack and bring it out and let it breathe. So it's good. Joe, thank you so much. It's wonderful to meet you. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
And I got